Now, it's been 1 year since riots broke out in Southport following the fatal stabbing of 3 young girls at a local dance class. The violence, fuelled by online misinformation about the identity of the attacker, led to widespread disorder. Well, joining me now is Labour MP for Southport, Patrick Hurley. A very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us this morning. This was a horrific attack that shocked the whole nation, followed by disorder as well, of course. I mean, it shocked the nation, but it would have been most keenly felt in the local community. So give us a sense of how that community is coping 1 year on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on this morning. The community is coping remarkably well. The community spirit that we saw in Southport in the days and weeks after the attack last year has continued. People come together like never before. It's become almost an institutional response now, though. It's not just an instinct and emotion. Charities have been set up by the families most directly affected. The local authority, the national government as well, have been very clear that Southport needs financial assistance, and that initial emotional response is now taking root and making sure we're making sure my office, the local authority, all of the institutions of Southport are working with the people, working with the community to make sure that some good comes out of that day.
Well, yes, and I know that there is some money being spent on a revamp of Southport's Town Hall Gardens, where people gathered for a vigil after the attack, and in memory of Bibi, Elsie and Alice, who, of course, died. Tell us about projects like that and how important it could be to the community.
It's of immense importance. In the days after the attack, the Prime Minister visited Southport several times, and he promised that he personally and his government would be what he called a good friend to the town, and he's made good on that promise. There's funding that's been provided to provide a legacy town hall garden square in front of the town hall, where people, like you say, gathered the day after. Funding has been promised at the spending review by Rachel Reeves for the town's seaside pier, and the pier has become emblematic of austerity years and totemic almost in the imagination of people in Southport, as a way of showing how the town had declined. And this is one of the things that maybe led to the rioting the day after. It's not so much around community cohesion or anything along those lines, but very clearly, I think, people were angry that their town money had been tight for places like Southport and been tight for too long, and people were angry around that. And there's no legitimate concerns that lead to people rioting, but at the same time, politicians need to acknowledge that these towns need help and these towns need financial help.
So that's interesting that that's your insight into why there was the unrest that followed. Do you think that any of those issues have been resolved in the intervening time?
People across the country had been promised the earth by politicians for years over all sorts of issues, and they'd been let down repeatedly. Now, the government had the right idea coming in July of last year and said, no more sticking plaster politics. It's going to take a decade to turn the country around, and things are going to take a while to get right. Because in places like Southport, we've been on the decline for maybe 25 years, and it's not going to be turned around overnight. But there are chinks of light there. There are announcements that have been made. We've got multi-million-pound investments now being announced by the government, by the local authority, things that are turning around, but it's going to take time. And I just say to people, bear with us. We're not going to be promising the earth. I'm not some populist politician coming in saying, "Oh, you trust in me. Things are going to be fantastic within 6 months." But people incrementally, month by month, year by year, will see that things are getting better. We'll see that the right approach is being taken in terms of getting GDP rates back up to respectable levels, making sure that the proceeds of that growth are felt in towns like mine, those critical neighbourhoods that are so key. We saw the disturbances of the riots last year take place overwhelmingly in towns that had been neglected for years. So Southport, Tamworth, Stoke, places like that, places that don't always tend to make the headlines. And that's where the disturbances were. And I think overwhelmingly it's because people were feeling less prosperous than they had been and just felt like they'd been ignored by central government for too long. Now, it's no coincidence that the riots took place in the same month of the general election. People's expectations are high, and we need to make sure we deliver on them.
Do you think there's a risk it could happen again, the unrest?
There's always a risk. There's always a risk it could happen again. I think the circumstances of last summer were very unique, but people online especially are attempting to cause disturbances again, and I know the police, the law enforcement are very vigilant to make sure that doesn't happen. But we've always got to be mindful. We've always got to be aware that people are trying to cause trouble. One of the things that kicked off in Southport last year, at the end of July, was people coming in and explicitly trying to stir up trouble. The day after the stabbing, we had people arrive at lunchtime into town and go on their social media sites and their streaming platforms, explicitly encouraging people to come into the town to cause trouble that evening. And those requests were successful. 3-4 hours later, people were getting off trains, getting off coaches, coming into the centre of the town and rioting. And we got to be very vigilant that doesn't happen again. So there's kind of a twin track approach, that we're vigilant against it, but we also look at dealing with the underlying causes, and those underlying causes are long-term stagnation and a government that hadn't been listening to them prior to July and promised the earth and didn't deliver.
Well, Patrick Hurley, Labour MP for Southport, we appreciate your time this morning and reflecting 1 year on since those attacks and the subsequent riots. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.